Hi, I'm sure you've heard of the Unity debacle. If not, Unity is a very popular game engine, or it was a very popular game engine application for making games, until recently when the Unity Technologies, the company behind Unity, announced some changes and their reputation basically imploded. They've pretty much caused irreparable damage to the Unity name. As we can see, they've rolled back these changes, and people still aren't happy, and justifiably so, because we now know that we have to live in fear. We've been reminded that we have to live in fear that our entire livelihoods could be taken away on a whim. And I thought I'd share my perspective as an aspiring game dev. Haven't yet made anything. I've made some work with Unity. Haven't yet made anything I can sell. But this has certainly made me hesitant to use the engine in the future. And so there's been all these videos discussing the runtime fee. I'll just fill you in case you haven't heard. So this story has some parallels to Reddit's API changes a while back. In fact, the story of Unity is kind of similar to Reddit. It was a good service. There was this false stereotype about people using the website or the application, with Redditors being degenerate losers and Unity games being cheap asset flips, where people would just buy assets and repackage them to make money off of Steam keys. But the users did know that it was a good product. Unity Technologies and Reddit were rare examples in our world of companies that actually have good standing with their user base. I think Reddit had a few problems that they were sweeping under the rug, but Unity is a business. It is run to make money. And, well, throughout most of its history, Unity's pricing model was very generous. There was a personal version which was free, a plus version, and a pro version, which were subscriptions. You don't really get many additional features for upgrading. It's simply a requirement based on your business's income, which is self-reported. Other engines like Unreal simply take a share of your income, which is fair, And it was understood that Unity would probably be changing their pricing model in the future, but Unity promised that their new monetization would be fair and reasonable, much like how Reddit promised that their API charges would be fair and reasonable. Unity implemented what's called a runtime fee. Basically, if you're a game developer making a game with their platform, Unity would start charging you every time someone downloaded and installed your game. So if you had this many installs, you would have to pay this amount per install. If you have this many installs, you had to pay this amount per install. So you now had to worry about your game becoming too successful. And it seemingly did not factor into account the actual revenue made per install. So games that sold for cheaper would be punished. This could potentially take 50% or more of a game developer's income. Furthermore, some bad actors could install the game over and over and over again from one sale and cost you hundreds of dollars. On top of that, this would apparently retroactively affect games made previously with the engine. And there was talk, is this even legal? Apparently it was. It wouldn't retroactively affect previous sales. That would be very illegal if you just woke up to an email from Unity saying, "Hey, you owe us millions of dollars." But no, it would retroactively affect sales of games made previously with the engine going forward. So games that people made not knowing that this would come into effect, the response was livid, not just from the user base, but from game developers that don't use Unity and from gamers in general. Because this would hurt everyone. There was talk of the importance of open source engines such as Godot. These aren't controlled by powerful corporations. These are passion projects, and you can use them safely knowing you won't be backstabbed. And Realogic, the devs behind Terraria, donated $100,000 each to Godot and FNA. The thing that made this situation so scary was that there was seemingly not much alternative, given that Unity was very accessible and open source alternatives like Godot didn't have as much support, didn't have as many tutorials, so it was harder to learn and use. But it seems like maybe we don't need Unity. we kept thinking we could never live without Unity by our side, but then we spent so many nights thinking about how they did us wrong, and we grew strong and we learned how to get along. That was terrible. Hey, I initially forgot to record this, but I really have no idea why Unity did this, considering what it's done to them, what it's done to their business. And yeah, now I think we'll probably be seeing a lot more tutorials for Godot, and the influx of Unity tutorials would probably slow down to a trickle. But yeah, Unity really shot themselves in the foot. They woke up to face the music, and they obviously flew into panic, and now they're trying to backpedal to get out of the pit that they found themselves in. And they put out a statement. Let's look at it now. To our community, I'm Mark Whitten, and I lead Unity Create, which includes the Unity engine and editor teams. I want to start with this. I am sorry that you got caught. We should have spoken with you more, and we should have incorporated more of yada yada. Yeah, no, how did they not know how this would have gone down? You are what makes Unity great, and we know we need to listen and work hard to earn your trust. Yet you had our trust and you put it in the bin. Our Unity Personal plan will remain free, and there will be no runtime fee for games built on Unity Personal. You might be thinking, why is there a runtime fee? Why don't they just implement a revenue share like Unreal? And yeah, they kind of did. We'll get to that. One of the things that people talked about during this debacle was the removal of Unity Plus. Now, that's not really an issue for features, but it would mean that you would have to pay more to remove the default splash screen. Now, the income threshold for Unity Pro was $100,000 a year, but they say we will be increasing the cap from $100,000 to $200,000. Huzzah! And we will remove the requirement to use the Made with Unity splash screen. So if you don't know why this is a big deal, previously using the free version of Unity would require you to use the Made with Unity splash screen as a way of advertising Unity, I guess. The thing is, low quality games, asset flips that the creator did not actually put their original work into, would be made with the free version. This splash screen, proudly saying Made with Unity, would be associated with these low quality games, giving Unity an image problem. So Unity forced this splash screen to proudly advertise their software on the games that were least likely to be good. What sense does that make? So they finally got rid of it. No game with less than $1 million in trailing 12-month revenue will be subject to the fee. The runtime fee policy will only apply beginning with the next LTS version of Unity shipping in 2024 and beyond. Your games that are currently shipped and the projects you are currently working on will not be included unless you choose to upgrade them to this new version of Unity. The main reason they're making this change, other than all the backlash, is because it actually is illegal, contrary to the assessments of many people on the internet. At least in some jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions have these based laws, can't believe I'm saying based, that says, no, you cannot impose new terms of service on works of media previously made with the software. For example, the European Union, and this is a rare example of a European Union law that's actually good. Generally, European Union laws are awful and negatively impact the world as a whole. Not just the European Union, it's detrimental to the entire world, like Article 13, how it influences the internet. But this is a pretty good law. It says, when you make a work of media using creative software, that work is bound by the terms of service as written during the creation of the work. It is not subject to changing terms of service. On top of that, it called into question how Unity would actually get these numbers. It seems that they were using some form of analytics, spyware, that they're actually forcing into games made with the engine. And this is where we actually get into the revenue share. For games that are subject to the runtime fee, we are giving you a choice of either a 2.5% revenue share or the calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging with your game each month. Engaging meaning installing. Both of these numbers are self-reported from data you already have available. You will always be billed the lesser amount. So the only times you would be charged for the number of installations is if you specifically reported it to get a better deal. Otherwise, it just is a revenue share, and significantly less than Unreal. If they had just announced this from the beginning, this would not garner anywhere near as much rage. And if you think this is just naive innocence, I want to draw your attention to something. Unity previously stated in the terms of service that the terms of service would apply to games as written during the production of the game. They removed this from the terms of service a couple of weeks before announcing this change. They knew what they were doing. And again, they rolled this back because other than the backlash, it is illegal. So they implemented a much more reasonable policy, in my opinion, but the damage is done. The trust is gone. We now live with the knowledge that Unity would do this, as we can see from some of the comments on the matter. Let's look at some of these comments. I really wonder how much of a difference this is going to make for people. History has shown with a lot of these tone-deaf decisions that these kind of walkbacks tend to be temporary, long enough for people to forget or shrug off the memory of the previous attempt when companies like Unity come up with a better way to shroud it in something that feels more positive. It's really hard to trust once they've shown their face behind the mask, especially when you're dealing with worms of the gaming world like Riccatello. That's the CEO of Unity and former CEO of EA. He was fired from EA for being too greedy. That's like how Mad Jack in DK64 came out the reject chute of a factory making evil toys. I have no idea why any company would want to hire him if they'd want to maintain a good face. That's even worse than when Sega hired Bernie Stoller after he was kicked out of Sony Computer Entertainment. Daft thing is, I would have been perfectly fine with the 2.5% royalties had they gone with that up front, so long as it was after a decent minimum income threshold, like how Unreal does it. The problem I have now is that I can't trust them not to retroactively change the deal again in the future.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
The problem with their new statement is this. They've shown a willingness to retroactively change a contract. What is to stop them from doing that again? Customer backlash? They have breached the trust of the customers. That is almost impossible to fix. There's nothing that Unity could ever do to regain the trust of the developers who supported it for so many years. Unity showed their hand too early and too abruptly, and now the jig is up. When a company starts their apology with, "We're sorry you misunderstood," it's not an apology. It's a passive-aggressive tack on the people who didn't like their decision. Don't trust them because they backpedaled. It's your livelihood on the line. It's not some game with bad monetization and an a-hole dev or publisher with a giant ego ticking people off. This is the food on your family's plate. This is actually a really good one. Trust is like an ankle. Breaking it takes a second or less. Healing it up takes a couple of years and will never be the same anyway. But I must also say one thing. Riccatello was a CEO since 2014. His track record in EA was not some grand mystery. Not seeing this happening from a mile away is a perfect example of willful ignorance and terminal stupidity. By the way, there's numerous allegations of insider trading for getting higher ups, including Riccatello. Like they just dumped a whole load of stock before they announced their horrible decision. But yeah, this is not quite a happy ending to the story. And it's a story we see far too often in our world. Companies just becoming less friendly, more corporate entities. We've seen it happen with Reddit. We've seen it happen with Wizards of the Coast. I don't know if they've made things right, I haven't been following that. Very rarely do we see this happen in reverse. I think it did kind of happen in reverse with Sega, where Sega of San Francisco closed down, and Sega became less corporate, I guess. But yeah, living capitalism is basically like living in the world of Greek mythology. You can be struck down at any moment by an uncaring, apathetic, arrogant, narcissistic, hedonistic, really powerful thing, and there's nothing you can do about it. So what to do now? Well, right now Unity doesn't charge a fee for people installing your game. They might increase the revenue share in the future. They probably won't implement this change retroactively, given that it's illegal in the European Union. They probably won't force you to update to a new version, since legacy projects that people have been working on for years might require developers to use the older version, because breaking into a newer version breaks it down. You might have noticed that I've used the word probably in there quite a few times. As I've said, I am an aspiring game dev, and I've been working on this project since high school, which I've put on a hiatus. I've been working on it in Unity. What am I going to do now? I don't know. Right now, I'm working on a game with RPG Maker. RPG Maker, by the way, is also commercial software developed by a small company with very generous pricing and a good standing with the user base. Could change. Hopefully, companies like RPG Maker will see this as a cautionary tale. Hopefully, every company that makes game engines will see this as a cautionary tale. And hopefully, Unity will realize that their CEO is poison to their business and give him the boot. That's about it. This is where I'd ask you to subscribe, but I do want to point out that I'm not planning to cover Unity drama in the future, or to cover drama in general, like Moist Critical or Some Ordinary Gamers. And I will point out that the YouTube algorithm does hurt YouTubers when people subscribe and don't stick around, so do consider that. But I am going to be working on some movie reviews, some of which are very overdue. So, see you.